So the federal government is still shut down, but there are growing calls and pressure to reopen the government. And the latest that we've heard comes from a large federal union, a union that represents over 800,000 federal workers. And the message is clear. Pass a clean CR, continuing resolution. Do not hold out for extending health care subsidies. Pass a clean continuing resolution. Get the government open again so the workers can get paid and discuss what you need to discuss later. If that is done, that would kick the can for 2 weeks. Mid-November, then a discussion would have to happen again, but at least the workers would be paid. Because right now we have hundreds of thousands of federal workers that missed their first paycheck. And they're about to miss a second one. You can barely afford to miss one. Most people can absolutely not afford to miss two. If you didn't know this already, over half the country is living paycheck to paycheck. Now, the union president, they called it a national disgrace. The fact that the government is shut down, and it has been shut down for as long as it has. Now, other unions are jumping in too. It's not just this one union. Other unions are calling for the government to reopen. And you could be wondering, like, well, that's great, but what power does a union have? These are just words. Nobody has to listen to them. Do they have any real influence? Well, there is something behind their words, and it's money. If you look at political contributions to the Senate, to the House, unions just last year, an election is a 2-year cycle, so every 2 years, just last year, they contributed something like $5 million to political campaigns, largely Democrat. No surprise there. But is $5 million enough? Well, that's not enough to get you influence in the Senate, apparently, because if you look at all the donations to the Senate for a regular election cycle, it's like $1 billion, maybe a little bit more than $1 billion, like 1.1 billion. So really 5 million, that's just a drop in the bucket. The Senate Democrats yesterday, they rejected another clean CR for the 13th time. This show has been going on 13 iterations with the same result. It's the same people voting for and against. And you still have Rand Paul out there, who's a Republican in name, but he's voting against this thing every single time. And you have the 3 Democrats that are on the side of the Republicans, but it's not enough. So what do the Democrats want? It's the same thing. They want to extend the premium subsidies to the Affordable Care Act. And it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And if you think about it, it makes sense from a mathematical perspective. Because if you look at the federal workforce, you have maybe 2 million. It could be less right now, but 2 million people. If you look at the Affordable Care Act subsidies, you look at 20 million. Who do you want to fight for? If you are taking a stand and you had to pick one or the other, would you pick 2 million or would you pick 20 million? They're looking at their constituency. They're looking at the people that vote for them. And of course, they're also looking at what's the probability of me getting reelected to keep my seat in Congress? So would you rather try to appease 20 million or 2 million? And that's part of the reason why it seems like federal workers, the federal workforce, has been kind of getting the short end of the stick when it comes to the Democrats taking a stand. They're not taking a stand saying, hey, reduce the federal purge or preserve this office, preserve that office. No, they're doing it when it comes to health care subsidies. And what we're also seeing is Republicans are using this opportunity to jump in and say, hey, I can't believe you're not listening to the unions. The unions, they're on your side. How could you turn your back on the unions? The Republicans don't really care that much about unions. If you look at the history of unions, it's not a core area that Republicans count on for support. Unions typically lean left, but they're using this opportunity to criticize them. They would never otherwise tell the Democrats to listen to the unions. It's only in this one situation, right? So the Republicans have continued to do a great job when it comes to communicating who is responsible for this shutdown. They paint the picture very cleanly, very neatly, and they post it everywhere that they can. It's all over social media. They were trying to get it in the airports. They wanted the airports to actually broadcast the message that this is the Schumer shutdown. That's the message they're trying to portray out there. I think they're doing a good job of it. Everywhere I go, I see Schumer shut down this, Schumer shut down this. Every government website that you go to, it's basically pointing the finger at the Democrats. And for a lot of people, they see why. It's not a big surprise. Now, when it comes to paying federal workers, we have a lawmaker like, let's see, Ted Cruz, Republican, right? He wants to draft a new bill to pay the air traffic controllers. Why? This whole shutdown thing, it's all on the airports. As soon as the airports crack to an unsustainable level, meaning people completely can't get out when it comes to flying to different places, when the airports shut down, essentially, that's when there's so much pressure that the lawmakers can no longer afford to fight. They buckle to the actual airports. They buckle to the air traffic controllers. That's why it is illegal for air traffic controllers to go on strike. And for that matter, any federal employee, they're not allowed to go on strike. Yeah, we talk about unions, but there is no right to strike. If an air traffic controller were to go on strike, that offense is punishable up to 12 months in prison, in jail. So they can't go on strike. They can quit. If they wanted to quit, they can easily quit, but then they would have to, think about their next job. So we're not paying these people. I think it's important to emphasize that. We're not paying air traffic controllers right now. Some airports are actually feeding them. They're giving them food when they come into work. Because even though a lot of air traffic controllers have a high salary, that doesn't stop. I mean, people are still living paycheck to paycheck. You find people in all types of income brackets living paycheck to paycheck. It's just not the GS7 and below. You would be surprised there's a lot of GS15s that could be living paycheck to paycheck. And it comes down to, your situation, what's happening in your life, or maybe your financial literacy. We also heard about a bipartisan pay bill that was cooking, but it didn't get off the ground. There's 3 bills, really. All 3 of them, they have one thing in common. They want to pay the military service member. I think it's a great thing. I think it's an amazing thing. I think it should be done. But outside of that, they don't have very much in common, because one bill wants to pay only the accepted federal worker, meaning the worker that actually has to come in and continue to do their duties and responsibilities without getting paid, but they do not want to pay the furloughed federal worker. And then the other one's vice versa, not vice versa. They basically want to pay everybody, to even include contractors. They want to pay contractors. So this isn't really going anywhere. And many military service members, they said they were paid. Back on the 15th, they were paid, but you still had a couple of dozen people that were not. They were reporting they weren't paid. And then other people were paid too much. So there's still some kinks in the system. And what we're hearing right now is they should get paid on the 1st, November 1st. They should get paid. They just might not get an LES, but they should get paid. LES is a leave earning statement, so they might not get that. Now, in other news, we have 24 states that are suing the White House over the SNAP suspension. So SNAP is gone starting November 1st. A lot of states have already announced it. And obviously, it can negatively impact low-income households. Now, the counter argument to SNAP is you will see a lot of people say that it is abused. And I'll be the first one to tell you that pretty much every government program gets abused. If there's money there for good reason, good cause, you have bad actors that are trying to exploit it, trying to abuse or take advantage of it. So what you will hear is some people sell their SNAP benefits. And then the question is like, well, how do they do that? Well, they'll go into a grocery store with their card and they'll buy, like, let's say $500 of grocery. Then they'll charge somebody like $100 or $200 in cash. So they're trying to get a cash value that is not equated to the amount that they spent. So you spend $300-$400, you get $100, $150. So apparently this scheme is going on around the country. I don't have any knowledge of it. I've never met anybody who does this. If you know more about this whole SNAP thing, let me know what's going on, because I've never seen it. What I do know is the government spends $100 billion each and every year when it comes to food subsidies, when it comes to the SNAP program, which was previously, when I was a kid, it was called food stamps. They call it SNAP now, evidently. Now, if you're curious about the future of the federal workforce, OMB Director Russ Volt, you probably know that individual. He's, pretty famous on social media for being the Grim Reaper. Well, a lot of people believe, to include myself, they believe that he is somewhat losing his influence in the administration for a lot of different reasons. If you want to know a little bit more about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.